Not only does this film highlight many of the serious challenges that face an increasingly urban world, it also shows how some of these problems are addressed. Now, over half of the world's population now live in urban areas. The United Nations estimate by 2050, 75% of the world's population will live in urban centers. However, while cities comprise less than 1% of the Earth's surface, they generate 75% of its greenhouse gas emissions. In the context of an expanding urban population, issues such as increasing costs of energy and climate change will result in greater competition for our declining resources. Hence, many of the urban challenges we face can only be resolved by changing the way we plan, build, and manage our cities and urban areas. Cities have always been sites of innovation and incubators of creativity. It is the flow of people, goods, energy, information, and services that determine whether a city becomes a destination and a habitat of choice. Therefore, the current set of challenges can be viewed as an opportunity for cities to forge a path that is more sustainable and driven by innovative ideas, new technologies, and creativity of its people. This film will show how other cities around the world are addressing their urban challenges, and through that, perhaps it will also provide a lens for us to approach some of the issues that we face here in Penang. After the film, we have a distinguished panel of professionals made up of planners, politicians, academics, and urbanists who provide their reactions to the film. Maybe they can explain what an urbanist is. This is a new term, an urbanist. Discussions on these issues are timely and even more critical that involves a broad range of stakeholders like what we have here today, from NGOs to members of local authorities to professional architects, planners, and developers. All of you are responsible for the planning and development of our city, and of course of Penang, and it's important that you are aware of the challenges of the modern world. It is my hope that this film will inspire ideas on how we go about planning together to make Penang not only the most sustainable and livable city in Malaysia and the region, but also to achieve our collective goal of becoming an international and intelligent city of the future. There are three pressing habitat issues in Penang that requires urban solutions that offer sustainable development. One is traffic congestion. Unfortunately, traffic congestion in Penang is something that is built up as a result of policy failure and leadership apathy and neglect over the previous 18 years that cannot be overcome overnight. The state government, through the two local authorities of MBPP and MPSP, has undertaken short-term, medium-term, and long-term measures. Short-term measures of forcible clamping and removal of vehicles that block traffic, not very popular, of course, but necessary. Synchronization of traffic lights and redirection of traffic flows. Medium-term measures of widening roads, building laybys, and connecting roads to widen transport access. I think that has been seen in Masjid Negeri, been seen in Butterworth, where we connect roads so that we can provide new road accesses. And lastly, long-term measures of at least 4 major infrastructure projects to provide 4-lane highways to connect heavily congested areas, including a third link between Gurney Drive and Butterworth through Malaysia's proposed first underground sea tunnel. The Penang PR state government has helped to fund the 3.2 million ringgit Penang Transport Master Plan. Now, even though 2 proposals are mooted by the transport consultants, certain irresponsible parties appear to blame the present state government for either ignoring the PTM, the Penang Transport Master Plan, or not developing and promoting public transport. Now, I would agree that when you talk about any solution, an urban solution to traffic congestion, our focus should be on moving people rather than moving vehicles. But we must also remember, public transport is not within the state government's domain. It is a federal jurisdiction. The state government has no control over public transport. So powerless is the state government that we have no powers to impose meters on taxis. That's why you find that in Penang, there are no metered taxis, or rarely, if at all. or we have even no powers to ask buses to provide for free bus services, even though we want to pay the bus companies to provide free bus services. Now the Penang Transport Master Plan, the consultants realizes the constraints, the limits of state government's powers, and that's why they made two proposals instead of one proposal. Number one is what they describe as the balanced public transport option. On the event or on the premise that the federal government would give full cooperation and assistance to develop the public transport option, which costs 13 billion ringgit. 13 billion ringgit. Now, in the event that the federal government's cooperation and assistance is not forthcoming, then they propose a highway option of building more roads, which costs 12.5 billion. So the highway option is cheaper than the balanced public transport option by 500 million. That means building highways, building more roads. And they propose 7. We only propose 4. They propose 7. That's 12.5. And this is a fallback position. Essentially, it is a fallback position. In the event that we cannot get the necessary cooperation from the federal government, and we know in the before the 2008 general elections, the federal government had promised to provide a monorail or tram system as well as a bypass road. But of course, these promises remain empty promises. And that's why the consultants realized that if they propose a public transport option, it only looks good on paper. It only looks good on paper, but not actualized. Because if you do not have federal government cooperation and support, it is impossible to implement. And as I said just now, even when we want to pay buses to provide free transport, we had so much difficulties. And for that reason, the traffic consultants have developed a fallback position, at least to mitigate traffic congestion when they arise, by providing additional highways and roads so that you can have some options on how to at least mitigate traffic congestion. So we will of course prefer a public transport option where we can have powers over public transport. But until these powers are forthcoming, I think we have also to develop a fallback position. We cannot just sit down, twiddle our thumbs and say that one is the federal government's problem, they don't do anything, what can we do? We do nothing. Now this is not a do-nothing government. The PR state government is not a do-nothing government. We have to come up with something. And that's why we're proposing this fallback position for road infrastructure projects. In the event that we are unable to make any headway, we are unable to make any ground, at least we have a fallback position. And I think even a traffic consultant says that a third link is probably necessary, of course, in the far future, but planning has been done now, including the highway from Batajur Bunga to Batu Fringhi, from Dari Drive to Lim Chong Yu Expressway, and from Relau, Aitam to Lim Chong Yu Expressway, one of the most densely populated areas in Malaysia, in Aitam and Relau. This is the first problem relating to traffic congestion. Number 2, habitat protection. When you talk about habitat, sustainable living, we're also talking about habitat protection. Now this requires rigorous enforcement and restrictions on hill slope development. As the leader of the Pakatan state government in Penang, I am proud of our record of not approving any hill slope development projects and have asked our local authorities to ensure compliance. I've been informed by the 2 local authorities that any hill slope developments are either approved or undertaken by the previous state government. Unfortunately, such approvals, when given by the previous state government, is still legally enforced, and the procedures that follow from such approvals usually cannot be stopped. They may approve before 2008, but the procedures that follow from that approval may happen during our time. But once approval is given, you cannot stop those processes. Now, as a rules-based government, the present state government has no choice but to observe the laws and respect approvals given, even though it is from the previous state government. When you talk about upholding the law, you are talking about rules-based. I think you have to also take the good and the bad. You have to observe the law. Then only you talk about mendaulatkan undang-undang. That means you are talking about upholding the law and the constitution. Again, for those who try to pin the blame on the state government for any hillslope development, should perhaps explain why they gave approvals in the first place. Thirdly, I think the third pressing urban problem that we need to find a solution is, of course, to provide affordable housing. The PR Penang State Government will be outlining a complete and holistic framework of providing affordable housing to Penangites, involving not just the government but also the private sector. For the past 4 years, the state government has saved and gathered funds, and we have now allocated an initial sum of 500 million ringgit and free land to be provided for this purpose of building affordable housing. The first project involving 12,000 units in the new satellite town of Batu Kawan, where the second bridge lands. This is the largest sum given by any state government in Malaysian history. 500 million as an initial sum towards building affordable housing. And bear in mind, more of such proposed affordable housing projects will be built, not just on the mainland, but also on the island of Penang, which we will announce later. And I would like to make also an announcement here. As a first step to protect the interests of local Malaysians, the state government is proposing to increase the minimum limit for foreign purchases of all properties from the existing level of 500,000 ringgit to 1 million ringgit. That means for foreign purchases, you must buy above 1 million. That covers the mainland. For landed properties in Penang Island alone, you must buy above 2 million ringgit. For permanent residents, the present limit of 500,000 ringgit will be retained. There will be no increase for permanent residents, for PRs. But I'd like to repeat again, for all foreign purchases in Penang, you have to buy above 1 million. But for landed properties in Penang, you have to buy above 2 million ringgit. In 2010 and 2011, there were 774 and 890 property transactions involving foreigners. These transactions constitute only 2.98% and 2.26% respectively of the total number of property transactions in Penang. However, to protect the interests of locals to ensure that they enjoy priority for less expensive properties, this restriction will help to provide a level playing field, since foreigners have the advantage of a higher currency. The Penang State Government stresses that we welcome foreign participation in our economy, including our property market. The state government feels that the foreign participation can be profitable to both Penangites and foreigners in the higher end market, where they can add value by helping Penang to transform itself into an international and intelligent city. So we welcome you, but we think that it will be more profitable for both you and us at the higher end, where we can both develop Penang into an international and intelligent city. We would like to get feedback and opinions from NGOs, property developers, foreigners and the public on this proposal. The state government hopes to implement this proposal the earliest by the 1st of June this year, or the latest by the 1st of July 2012. Thank you very much.